The afternoon that changed everything. Dr. William Hayes was known for his skill, his dedication, and, as some colleagues would describe, his distance. A brilliant pediatric surgeon, Dr. Hayes had mastered every technique, every protocol, and every emergency response. Yet beneath his flawless work lay a man whose heart had, for years, been in recovery. For William, the hospital walls that contained his world also shielded him from the pain that had taken root long ago, the loss of his beloved wife, Sarah, a woman whose laughter had once filled every corner of his life. Since her passing, William's life was a series of perfectly constructed routines, devoid of any deviation. He kept to himself, exchanged little more than polite nods with staff, and in moments between surgeries, he returned to his quiet office, where a single framed photo of Sarah kept him company. As he glanced at her photograph on this particular afternoon, he felt the familiar ache in his heart. He whispered, "Sarah, sometimes I wonder how much longer I can go on like this." The room felt hollow, his whisper swallowed by the sterile, silent walls around him. That day, after his last surgery, William decided to break his usual routine and take a walk. He yearned for fresh air, a brief reprieve from the constant reminders of the life he had lost. He grabbed his coat, nodded to a passing nurse, and made his way to the nearby park, a place he rarely visited. The sun was beginning to set, casting a soft orange glow over the city, and William took in a deep breath of the crisp air. He felt a small sense of relief wash over him as he strolled under the trees, his thoughts wandering to memories he held close but seldom allowed himself to relive. As he walked along the winding paths, he noticed families picnicking, children laughing, and couples hand in hand, all sights that evoked a distant longing within him. He walked further, his hands shoved into his coat pockets, his mind lost in thought, when he heard it, a faint, high-pitched cry. The sound was small but unmistakable, breaking through the park's evening calm. William's heart skipped a beat as his doctor's instincts took over, his pace quickening as he followed the source of the cry. Rounding a bend, he came upon a wooden bench, and there, bundled in a thin blanket, was a baby. The tiny figure, perhaps only a few months old, lay writhing, his small fists balled up as he cried out, his face scrunched with distress. William's breath caught. He knelt beside the bench, eyes scanning the area, expecting to see a mother or caregiver nearby. But there was no one. The park had begun to empty, and silence blanketed the space around them. "Hey there, little one," he whispered, his voice gentle as he reached out to touch the baby's tiny hand. "What are you doing here all alone?" The baby quieted for a moment, looking up with big, tear-filled eyes that seemed to search William's face. Something powerful and indescribable stirred in William's chest, and without a second thought, he carefully scooped up the baby. The child was so small, so fragile. As he held him close, the baby's cries softened to a few whimpers before he nestled against William, finding comfort in his warmth. William's mind raced. He knew he needed to take the baby to the hospital to ensure he was safe and healthy, but in this brief, quiet moment, a new and unexpected feeling blossomed within him. He felt a connection, a pull, as though he was meant to be here, at this moment with this child. He had spent years hiding his heart away, afraid to face the pain within it. But now, in the presence of this abandoned child, those walls began to tremble. As he made his way to his car, the baby nestled in his arms, William whispered, "I don't know where you came from, little one, but I won't leave you." He glanced down at the baby, whose eyes had closed in exhaustion, his tiny fingers gripping William's coat. The weight of loneliness that had lingered in William's heart for so long seemed to lift, replaced by a tender warmth he hadn't felt since Sarah's death. Upon reaching the hospital, William hurried to the emergency room entrance. His colleagues looked up in surprise as he entered, the baby cradled securely in his arms. Dr. Karen Brooks, a close friend and trusted pediatrician, approached him, her expression one of disbelief. "William," she said, eyebrows raised, "what's going on?" Who is this? William took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving the child. I found him abandoned in the park, he replied, his voice steady yet filled with an emotion he couldn't hide. He was alone, crying. I don't know who left him there or why, but I couldn't just walk away. Karen's eyes softened as she took the baby from his arms, her doctor's instincts immediately assessing the child's condition. We'll make sure he's safe. But, William, are you all right? You seem different. He nodded, a small smile touching his lips. I feel like I've been given a second chance, Karen. A chance to help this child, to maybe even bring some light back into my life. As Karen and a hospital staff took the baby for a full examination, William found himself unable to leave his side. He waited outside the exam room, glancing through the small glass window, his heart racing as he watched the baby sleep peacefully under the watchful care of the nurses. Hours passed, yet no one arrived to claim the child. No one came searching, and the only sounds in the quiet halls were the baby's soft breaths and William's steady heartbeat, each pulsing with a new sense of purpose. As the night stretched on, William sat beside the baby's crib in the nursery, his mind racing with questions about what might come next. In the silence, he reached out, gently brushing his hand over the baby's small fist, feeling a newfound sense of responsibility and belonging. He whispered softly, I don't know what the future holds for us, but I promise you this, you'll never be alone again. The decision that changed everything. The early morning sun poured into the nursery, casting a gentle glow over the crib where the baby lay sleeping. William sat nearby, his head resting in his hands as he watched the tiny boy breathe softly, his chest rising and falling in a calm rhythm. It had been hours since he'd brought the baby to the hospital, and no one had come to claim him. William's mind had been racing all night with the implications of what he was about to do, but as he looked down at the sleeping infant, he felt a certainty he hadn't known in years. Dr. Karen Brooks returned, her face softened by a smile. She'd completed her examination and had confirmed that the baby was, miraculously, healthy and well-nourished despite his abandonment. William, she said gently, sitting down beside him, the baby is in good health. He seems to have been well cared for, but there's no record of him, no family looking for him. It's as if he appeared out of thin air. William looked at her, his expression firm. Then he needs someone to look after him, he said, feeling the gravity of his words settle on him. If no one else is coming, I want to be that person, Karen. I want to adopt him. Karen's eyes widened in surprise. William, it's a big decision. Are you sure you're ready for something like this? Raising a child is no small feat, especially alone. William took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving the baby. Since Sarah passed, I felt like I've been going through life on autopilot. But last night, holding him in my arms, I don't know how to explain it, Karen. It was like I found a reason to keep going, a reason to feel alive again. Karen reached out, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. If anyone has the heart for this, it's you. But have you really thought this through? You're a surgeon. Your life is intense, demanding. Adding a baby to the mix, well, it's a lot. William nodded, absorbing her words. She wasn't wrong. His life was demanding, structured, and often chaotic. Yet he felt an undeniable pull toward the child, a feeling that was new but unshakable. He knew that raising a child alone would be difficult, but he also knew that the life he'd been leading was empty, weighed down by loss and unfulfilled dreams. This little boy was a chance to change that. As they sat together in the quiet nursery, William looked down at the baby, noticing for the first time the small details. Tiny fingers curled around the edge of his blanket, a few soft tufts of hair, and a peaceful expression that made William's heart ache with protectiveness. I know it won't be easy, he said, his voice steady, but I can't ignore this feeling, Karen. He was left there for a reason. Maybe I was meant to find him. After a long silence, Karen nodded. All right. I'll support you, William. But let's take this one step at a time. The adoption process is complex, and there will be hurdles. With that, the next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, court appointments, and meetings with adoption officials. William faced each challenge with determination, navigating the intricate legalities of adopting a child who had no records, no known parents. But as he delved into the process, he realized just how far he was willing to go for the boy he had begun to call Michael, a name he'd chosen in honor of his late wife's father. Soon, his colleagues began to notice the change in him. Dr. Hayes, once known for his intense focus and solitary demeanor, now seemed livelier, often slipping away from his office to spend time in the nursery where Michael stayed as the adoption process slowly moved forward. Nurses and doctors whispered about the transformation, exchanging knowing glances as they watched William cradle Michael, his eyes softer, his expressions filled with a gentleness they'd never seen before. The adoption process proved as challenging as Karen had predicted. The state required background checks, home visits, and interviews, each more grueling than the last. At one meeting, a stern-faced social worker named Ms. Adelaide Carver sat across from him, clipboard in hand, her gaze sharp as she assessed him. "Dr. Hayes," she began, her tone neutral, "you're a highly respected surgeon, with an intensive workload. I have to ask, how do you intend to balance your demanding career with the needs of an infant?" William straightened in his chair, folding his hands in his lap. He had anticipated this question and had given it considerable thought. "I understand the demands of my job, Miss Carver, but I've already begun making changes to my schedule. I'm arranging for a rotation that will allow me to work fewer night shifts, and I've spoken with my colleagues about reducing my hours." Miss Carver made a note on her clipboard, her expression unreadable. "And what about support at home? You'll need reliable childcare when you're at the hospital." "I've looked into that as well," he replied, his voice calm but resolute. "I have a close-knit group of colleagues and friends who are willing to help, and I'm planning to hire a full-time nanny. Michael will be well cared for, and I'll make sure I'm there for him as much as possible." Miss Carver studied him for a moment, her expression softening slightly. "You seem very committed, Dr. Hayes. I'll be frank, cases like these, single fathers adopting abandoned children, are rare. But there's something different about you." She smiled, just a little, and added, "I believe you truly care for him." As William left the meeting, he felt a surge of hope and determination. The journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever lay ahead. That evening, he returned to the hospital, making his way to the nursery, where he found Michael sleeping soundly. He sat beside the crib, reaching through the bars to gently hold the baby's tiny hand. Michael stirred, his small fingers curling around William's thumb. The following weeks were filled with anticipation, as William began preparing his home for Michael's arrival. His once sterile, minimalist house was gradually transformed into a warm, welcoming space. He cleared out a guest room and began turning it into a nursery, filling it with soft toys, picture books, and a crib he assembled himself, despite his inexperience with tools. The quiet halls were soon filled with the colors of childhood, bright blues, greens, and yellows that brought life back to the place that had once been filled only with memories of his late wife. One evening, as he worked on hanging a mobile above the crib, his friend Karen stopped by, her arms laden with gifts and supplies. "I thought you might need a few more things," she said, smiling as she handed him a stuffed giraffe and a stack of baby clothes. William laughed, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in years. "Karen, thank you. I wouldn't be able to do this without your help." As she helped him unpack the supplies, Karen glanced around the nursery, her gaze settling on William. "You know, I don't think I've ever seen you this happy, William. Michael's already changed you. I can see it." William paused, looking around the room, then down at the giraffe in his hands. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again. But he's given me something to hope for, something to look forward to." They continued setting up the nursery, working late into the night. By the time they finished, William was exhausted but content. He stood in the doorway, surveying the room he'd created, feeling a swell of pride and joy. For the first time since Sarah's death, he felt that his life had meaning again. Finally, the day arrived. After months of grueling processes, background checks, and interviews, William received the call he had been waiting for. The adoption was approved. Michael was officially his son. That evening, William brought Michael home. As he carried him across the threshold, he felt a surge of emotions: joy, relief, and an overwhelming sense of love. He placed Michael in his new crib, watching as the baby's tiny hands grasped at the soft fabric of the blanket. "Welcome home, Michael," William whispered, a tear slipping down his cheek. "I promise I'll be here for you, always." In the quiet of his home, surrounded by memories of the past and hope for the future, William knew he had made the right choice. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with moments of doubt and difficulty, but he was ready. Michael had given him a reason to live again, to dream of a future he hadn't thought possible. And as he watched his new son sleep peacefully, he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change them both forever. Facing resistance and unexpected challenges. In the days following Michael's arrival, Dr. William Hayes found himself overwhelmed yet invigorated in ways he had never anticipated. Becoming a father, especially under such unique circumstances, brought both joy and anxiety. He quickly learned the delicate dance of juggling a demanding career as a pediatric surgeon with the responsibilities of single parenthood. Late nights, early mornings, and moments of doubt became part of his routine, yet he found himself smiling more than he had in years. Michael, with his soft coos and curious eyes, had become the center of William's world. However, the challenges came swiftly. As word spread among family and friends, reactions were mixed, often leaning toward disbelief. William's parents, Richard and Diane Hayes, were the first to voice their concern. They had been supportive of his career, of his independence, and even of his choice to remain single after his wife Sarah's passing. But this decision, to adopt a baby he'd found abandoned in a park, left them baffled. One chilly Saturday, William brought Michael to his parents' home for a visit. The baby, bundled in a blue knit hat and soft blanket, slept soundly in his arms as he entered the warm living room where Richard and Diane waited, their expressions a blend of warmth and concern. Diane approached, her eyes lingering on Michael with a mix of wonder and unease. "Will, honey, we're glad to see you and the baby," she began, her tone cautious. "But we're worried. Are you sure about this, raising a child alone, while working as a surgeon? It's a lot, son." William held Michael close, his jaw set in determination. "I know it's not easy, Mom, but I can't ignore what I feel. I found him there, left with no one, and I realized that maybe I was meant to find him. I have the means to provide him with a good life, to give him what he needs." Richard cleared his throat, casting a sidelong glance at Diane before he spoke. "Son, we understand that you want to help, but this is a serious commitment. A child isn't a project or a distraction. He's going to need you, truly need you. And what about your career? You've worked hard to get where you are." William sighed, his gaze moving between his parents. "I've thought about all of that. I know the risks, the sacrifices I'll have to make. But this isn't about me anymore. Michael needs someone, and I think I need him just as much. Since Sarah passed, I've been moving through life without purpose. This feels different. He's given me something I never thought I'd find again." Diane softened, reaching out to touch her son's arm. "Will, we're just worried. You have our support, but please, make sure you're ready for what this means. You'll be his everything." They continued talking late into the evening, and by the time William left, he felt both uplifted by his parents' cautious support and exhausted by the weight of their concerns. On the drive home, he glanced at Michael, now awake and gurgling softly in his car seat, and smiled. The road ahead would be challenging, but as he looked into the baby's bright eyes, He felt a deep sense of resolve, adjusting to fatherhood. In the days and weeks that followed, William quickly learned the nuances of fatherhood. His days at the hospital were structured, filled with procedures, routines, and meetings, but life with Michael was beautifully unpredictable. The baby's needs were constant and varied. A cry at midnight for milk, a giggle at dawn in response to a gentle lullaby, or a stubborn refusal to nap. William adapted, learning to anticipate his son's needs, discovering a depth of patience he hadn't known he possessed. One early morning, after a particularly long night, William found himself stumbling into the hospital, bleary-eyed but smiling as he carried a small photo of Michael in his pocket. He was greeted by his friend and fellow surgeon, Dr. Jake Thompson, who raised an eyebrow as he took in William's disheveled appearance. "Rough night?" Jake asked, smirking as he handed William a much-needed cup of coffee. William chuckled, taking a grateful sip. "You could say that. Michael's decided that sleep is overrated, apparently. But honestly, Jake, I wouldn't trade it for anything." Jake clapped him on the shoulder. "Fatherhood suits you, Will. I think I speak for the entire staff when I say we've never seen you this happy, even if you do look like you've been through a tornado." But while his colleagues admired the change, William soon faced another hurdle. Some of the hospital administration began expressing concerns about his ability to balance his duties as a single father with his demanding career. Dr. Lydia Barnes, the hospital's director, called him into her office one afternoon, her face lined with concern. "William," she began, her tone gentle yet firm, "I know how much this adoption means to you. But I also need you to understand that our work here is crucial. We need doctors who can give their full attention, especially in surgery. Have you considered how you'll manage both?" William leaned forward, meeting her gaze. "Dr. Barnes, I've taken steps to ensure Michael is cared for when I'm here. I have a full-time nanny, and I've adjusted my schedule as much as possible. I'm not underestimating the demands of this job, or of raising Michael, but I'm committed to making it work." Dr. Barnes nodded slowly, her expression softening. "I can see how much he means to you, William. We all do. Just keep the balance in mind. This is new territory for you, and we'll support you as much as we can." As he left her office, William felt a mixture of relief and determination. The road ahead was filled with challenges, but he was ready to face them. His love for Michael was growing deeper each day, fueling his resolve to provide his son with a stable, loving home. Facing prejudice. Not everyone's reactions were as understanding. One afternoon, while William was picking up Michael from a nearby park, he encountered a group of parents chatting nearby. As he held Michael close, one woman whispered to another, her gaze lingering on them with a hint of disapproval. William overheard snippets of their conversation, catching phrases like "single father" and "out of his depth." He ignored them, focusing on the joy in Michael's eyes as he gazed up at the trees. But later that week, the whispers continued, this time from a neighbor who approached him on his way to the car. "Dr. Hayes," she began, her tone dripping with faint concern, "I heard about your adoption. I just hope, well, I hope you're not in over your head. Raising a child is a lot of work, especially for someone in your position." William took a deep breath, holding back a retort. "Thank you for your concern," he replied, his tone calm. "But Michael is my son, and I'm committed to raising him with love and care. I may not have a traditional family, but he has everything he needs." As he drove away, William's mind raced with the prejudices and assumptions he'd encountered, but his determination grew. He had made a choice to love and protect Michael, and nothing would deter him from that promise. Bonding through the small moments. Despite the challenges, William found a deep joy in the simple, everyday moments he shared with Michael. On quiet evenings, he would sit beside the crib, singing lullabies he hadn't sung in years. Michael would look up at him, wide-eyed, before drifting off to sleep, his tiny hand reaching out to grasp William's fingers. One evening, as they sat together on the living room floor, William watched in amazement as Michael, now nearly 8 months old, reached for a toy and clapped his hands in delight. William laughed, the sound filling the room, a stark contrast to the silence that had once defined his home. He picked Michael up, spinning him gently, his heart swelling as the baby giggled, the sound pure and joyful. Over time, William found that these small moments of connection were what defined fatherhood for him. It wasn't the grand gestures or the big milestones that mattered most, but the everyday moments. Reading bedtime stories, wiping away tears, and sharing laughter. Michael had transformed his world, bringing light to the darkest corners of his life. A visit from the past. One evening, as William was preparing dinner, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Curiosity piqued. "Hello." The voice on the other end was hesitant but familiar. "William? It's Claire Matthews. I was a friend of Sarah's. We met a few times." William's heart skipped a beat. Claire had been close to his late wife, though they had lost touch after Sarah's passing. "Claire, it's been a long time. How are you?" "I'm doing well, thank you," she replied, her voice warm. "Listen, I heard about Michael, and I wanted to reach out. I can only imagine how Sarah would feel if she knew what you're doing. She always wanted to start a family with you, and I think she'd be so proud of you." Her words brought a lump to his throat. He hadn't spoken to anyone who knew Sarah so personally in years, and the memories washed over him with bittersweet clarity. "Thank you, Claire. I think of her often, especially now. Sometimes I wonder if Michael came into my life as a gift from her, a second chance." Claire hesitated, then spoke with a soft kindness. "Maybe he is. I just wanted you to know that if you need anything, support, a listening ear, I'm here. Raising a child alone can be challenging, but you're not alone, William." After they hung up, William felt a renewed sense of purpose. The life he was building with Michael wasn't just a reflection of his love for his son. It was a tribute to the life he had shared with Sarah, to the dreams they had once held. He realized that Michael was, in many ways, an answer to the love he and Sarah had shared, a continuation of the life they had dreamed of together. A new beginning. As the weeks turned into months, William settled into his role as Michael's father. His life was no longer defined by routines and loss, but by the spontaneous joy of fatherhood. He began to see the world through Michael's eyes, rediscovering the wonder in everyday moments, the beauty in small things. He watched as Michael took his first steps, his small hands reaching out for support, his laughter filling the room with a happiness that healed William's heart. Together, they built a new life, one filled with laughter, love, and hope. The journey was far from over, but as William held Michael close, he knew that he had found his purpose. For both of them, this was only the beginning. Growing pains and revelations, life with Michael had become William's new normal, but the journey was anything but smooth. By the time Michael was 3, he was a whirlwind of energy, curiosity, and laughter, filling every corner of William's life with an endless array of questions, discoveries, and challenges. Balancing the demands of his career with fatherhood required immense patience, a quality that William found himself developing more every day. But even the most dedicated parent finds himself unprepared for the unique challenges that come as a child grows and begins asking questions. The curious questions. One Saturday afternoon, as William and Michael were sitting on the back porch sharing a bowl of strawberries, Michael looked up at him, his face a mix of innocence and seriousness. "Daddy," he began, his small voice filled with curiosity, "where did I come from? Was I always with you?" The question took William by surprise. He paused, his mind racing as he considered how to answer. Though he had known that the day would come when Michael would ask about his origins, he hadn't anticipated that it would arrive so soon. Taking a deep breath, he put his arm around Michael, pulling him close. "Michael, you're right to wonder about that," he began gently. "You weren't always with me. A long time ago, I found you in the park. You were there all by yourself, and when I saw you, I knew that I wanted to take care of you and give you a home." Michael's face crinkled in thought, his young mind trying to process this information. But where was my other mommy and daddy? William felt his heart tighten, a twinge of pain that he'd anticipated but never fully prepared for. "I don't know exactly, buddy," he said softly, "but I believe they loved you very much. And maybe they had to leave you because they thought it would be safest for you. They trusted that you'd be found by someone who would love you and keep you safe." Michael seemed to consider this, nodding thoughtfully before he snuggled closer to William. "I'm glad you found me, Daddy. I don't remember them, but I'm happy you're my daddy now." William wrapped his arms around his son, a wave of gratitude filling his heart. "I'm glad I found you too, Michael. You're my little miracle." As they sat together, the question lingered in William's mind, a subtle reminder of the mystery surrounding Michael's beginnings. He realized that he might never know the whole truth about where Michael came from, but his son's words reassured him that the love they shared would always be enough. The struggles of school. By the time Michael turned 5, William began preparing him for kindergarten. He was both nervous and excited for his son's first big step into the world outside their home. William had enrolled him in a small, friendly school where he felt Michael would thrive, and he took time off work to be there on his first day, snapping pictures and offering words of encouragement. However, as Michael settled into the rhythm of school life, William began to notice subtle changes in his son's demeanor. Michael had always been joyful, outgoing, and full of life, but lately he seemed quieter, more withdrawn. One evening, as they sat together reading a bedtime story, William noticed Michael's frown, and the way he stared at his hands, deep in thought. "Michael, is something on your mind?" William asked, closing the book and turning to face him. Michael looked up, his eyes filled with confusion. "Daddy, some kids at school asked me why I don't have a mommy. They said it's weird." William's heart sank, a wave of protectiveness flooding over him. He took Michael's hand, his voice gentle but firm. "Michael, there's nothing weird about us. Families come in all shapes and sizes. Some kids have 2 parents, some have 1, and some even have grandparents or other family members who take care of them. You and I are a family, and that's what matters." Michael nodded, a hint of relief in his eyes, but William could see that the question still weighed on him. Over the next few weeks, he made a point to spend extra time with his son, creating new traditions, like Adventure Saturdays, where they'd explore different parts of the city, from museums and parks to bookstores and animal sanctuaries. These outings became a cherished part of their routine, and gradually William saw Michael's confidence returning. However, William couldn't shake the feeling that, despite his best efforts, Michael might continue to face questions and challenges because of their unique family dynamic. Determined to give Michael as much support as possible, William began attending a local support group for single parents. Meeting other parents who faced similar challenges gave him a sense of solidarity, and he found comfort in knowing that he wasn't alone in his journey. Together, they shared stories, advice, and most importantly, encouragement. A chance encounter. One rainy afternoon, while William and Michael were shopping for groceries, they encountered an elderly woman who seemed inexplicably drawn to them. She was standing in the same aisle, browsing cereal boxes, when her gaze fell on Michael. She paused, a curious look crossing her face, and then approached them, her eyes fixed on the boy. "Excuse me," she said, her voice warm but hesitant. "I don't mean to intrude, but your son has the most remarkable eyes. They remind me of someone I once knew." William smiled politely, nodding. "Thank you. He gets that a lot." But the woman's face softened further as she continued to look at Michael. I know it's strange to say, but he reminds me of my late husband, who passed away many years ago. I don't mean to make you uncomfortable, but I just wanted to say, he has a special spirit about him." Touched by her words, William watched her as she walked away, leaving a feeling of quiet wonder. Michael tugged on his sleeve, oblivious to the meaning behind the encounter. "Daddy, can we get the dinosaur cereal?" William chuckled, his heart warmed by the reminder of how innocent and carefree his son was. "Of course, buddy. Let's make it a special snack." Embracing change and tradition. As Michael grew older, William found himself exploring ways to honor his son's heritage, though he knew very little about it. Determined to instill in Michael a sense of pride in his identity, William began researching traditions, customs, and cultural celebrations, hoping to create experiences that would enrich his son's life. One evening, William planned a small celebration for Kwanzaa, complete with candles, stories, and songs that he carefully selected to introduce Michael to traditions rooted in African American heritage. Michael was delighted, his eyes lighting up as he listened to William explain the meanings of each candle and their significance. "Daddy, I like this," he said, his face glowing in the candlelight. "Can we do this every year?" William smiled, touched by his son's enthusiasm. "Of course, Michael. This is our tradition now." With each passing year, they continued these small celebrations, adding new elements as they learned more. William felt a deep sense of gratitude for the chance to honor Michael's heritage, hoping that these traditions would give him a sense of connection and belonging. The arrival of an unexpected figure. Just when William felt he was getting the hang of fatherhood, life threw him an unexpected twist. One evening, after a busy day at the hospital, he returned home to find an official-looking envelope in his mailbox. Curious, he opened it and found a letter from an organization he didn't recognize. His heart skipped a beat as he read the letter, which stated that someone had recently come forward, claiming to be a relative of Michael's. The letter explained that Michael's biological father, a man named Thomas Harris, had been attempting to trace his son for years, following a tragic series of events that had separated him from his family. According to the letter, Thomas had endured a wrongful imprisonment and had spent years working tirelessly to clear his name. Now, he was reaching out in the hope of reconnecting with the son he had never known. William's mind spun as he read the letter, his emotions torn between a fierce protectiveness over Michael and a growing curiosity. The idea of reintroducing Michael's biological family into his life was daunting, and he feared the potential disruption it might bring. Yet he knew that one day Michael might want to know more about his origins, and he wanted to do what was best for his son. After several days of contemplation, William reached out to Thomas. The initial conversations were tense but respectful, with both men treading carefully around their mutual concern for Michael's well-being. Thomas shared the heartbreaking story of how he had lost Michael and his mother during a turbulent time, forced to leave them behind to protect them from harm. Eventually, William agreed to a cautious, supervised meeting between Thomas and Michael. On the day of the visit, he prepared Michael as best as he could, explaining that a man would be coming who was connected to his past. Michael, though initially nervous, was curious and seemed open to meeting this stranger. When Thomas arrived, he was visibly emotional, his eyes misting over as he looked at Michael for the first time. He knelt down, his voice trembling as he introduced himself. "Hello, Michael. My name is Thomas, and I'm someone who's been hoping to meet you for a very long time." Michael looked up at William, who gave him an encouraging nod. Slowly, he stepped forward, curiosity overtaking his initial hesitation. "Hi," he said, his voice soft but clear. "I'm Michael." As they spent the afternoon talking, Thomas shared stories of Michael's mother, painting a picture of a woman filled with kindness and strength. Michael listened intently, his gaze occasionally flicking to William for reassurance. William stayed by his side, offering silent support as his son absorbed the complex details of his past. After Thomas left, Michael was quiet, his mind clearly processing all that he had learned. That evening, as they sat together in the living room, Michael looked up at William with a question in his eyes. "Daddy, does this mean I have two daddies now?" William smiled gently, wrapping an arm around his son. "You'll always be my son, Michael. Family isn't just about where you came from. It's about the people who love you. I'll always be here for you. And if you ever want to know more about your other family, we'll do that together." In that moment, William realized that fatherhood was an ever-evolving journey, filled with moments of uncertainty, courage, and grace. Through the challenges and the joys, he knew he would always stand by Michael's side, guiding him with love and an unwavering commitment to be the best father he could be. For both of them, this new chapter was another step forward, a continuation of the love that had first brought them together, rediscovering family and forgiveness. The meeting with Thomas left a quiet ripple in their lives, one that William could sense even before Michael found words to express it. In the weeks that followed, William noticed subtle changes in his son, a thoughtful silence, a reflective gaze that lingered longer than usual, especially when they shared their nightly bedtime routine. Michael had always known himself as William's son, and though he had sensed the mystery of his origins, hearing details from Thomas had given him a new perspective, one that seemed to add layers of curiosity and sometimes conflict. One evening, as William was tucking Michael in, he decided to broach the subject gently. "Michael," he began, smoothing a strand of hair from his son's forehead, "you've been awfully quiet lately. Is there anything you'd like to talk about?" Michael looked up, his eyes clouded with questions he had yet to voice. "Daddy," he began slowly, "I've been thinking about Thomas. He told me stories about my other mommy. She sounds like she was nice. Do you think she'd be proud of me?" William's heart tightened as he took in his son's vulnerable expression. "Michael," he said softly, "I have no doubt she would be incredibly proud of you. She would love seeing how smart, kind, and strong you are." He took a deep breath before continuing, "And so am I. I'm incredibly proud of you, every single day." Michael nodded, comforted but still processing the complexity of it all. "I know, Daddy," he said, "and I love you. I guess it's confusing, you know. I love our family, but now I have someone else, someone I don't really know yet." William pulled him close, his arms enveloping Michael in a warm, steady embrace. "It's okay to feel that way, buddy. Families can be complicated, but just because someone new is in your life doesn't change what we have. You'll always be my son, no matter what." In the weeks that followed, William made an effort to foster a balanced relationship between Michael and Thomas. They arranged regular visits, usually on weekends, where Thomas would take Michael out to explore parts of the city William hadn't yet shown him, or to visit local events and small museums. Michael would return from each outing with a new story to tell, and though William sometimes felt a pang of uncertainty, he knew these experiences were enriching his son's life, a bond forged in understanding. Over time, a tentative bond began to form between William and Thomas. Initially, their conversations had been brief and polite, but as they coordinated their schedules around Michael's needs, they discovered an unexpected understanding. Both men had sacrificed and fought for Michael in different ways, and though their roles were distinct, they shared a mutual respect for each other's commitment. One afternoon, after dropping Michael off at school, William ran into Thomas at a nearby coffee shop. They exchanged greetings, and as they each waited for their orders, Thomas broke the silence. "William," he began, his voice sincere, "I don't think I've had a chance to really thank you for everything you've done for Michael. I know I can't make up for the years I missed, but knowing that you were there for him all along, it means a lot to me." William paused, his gaze steady as he looked at Thomas. "I'm glad you found him, Thomas," he replied. He's everything to me. He brought me back to life in ways I didn't expect. I would have done anything for him." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping their coffee, two fathers with a shared love for a boy who had united them in an unlikely bond. Thomas sighed, looking down at his coffee, his voice quiet. "I know it hasn't been easy, letting me be in his life. I respect that, and I'm grateful. I've made peace with the fact that I can't change the past, but I want to be here for his future, whatever that looks like." William nodded, recognizing the sincerity in Thomas's words. He knew how much it took for Thomas to admit his regrets, and for the first time, William felt the weight of his resentment lifting, replaced by a cautious hope. "Michael deserves all the love he can get," William said simply, a small smile forming on his lips. "And if that means you're part of his life, then that's what we'll do. Together." Navigating new traditions. As Michael grew, the holidays became a significant part of the year, marked by traditions both old and new. For William, the holidays had once been bittersweet reminders of memories shared with Sarah. But with Michael, he found new meaning in each celebration, a renewed sense of joy in decorating their home, baking cookies, and watching holiday movies together. That year, William decided to host a holiday dinner and invited Thomas, hoping to strengthen the bond between their families. Thomas accepted gratefully, bringing with him a dish his mother used to make, a warm, savory casserole that filled the room with rich aromas. As they gathered around the table, Michael sat between William and Thomas, his face glowing with happiness as he watched his two fathers share stories and laughter. After dinner, they sat by the fireplace, sharing stories about their childhoods, and Thomas regaled them with tales of his own family's holiday traditions. Michael listened with rapt attention, absorbing each story, each tradition, as though he were weaving them into the tapestry of his own history. Later, as Michael dozed off, curled up between William and Thomas, William felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. The past was behind them, and though the road ahead would have its challenges, they were all ready to face it together. The search for identity. By the time Michael turned 10, he was growing into a thoughtful, self-assured young man. But as he began exploring his identity, his questions grew more complex, more profound. One evening, as they sat together at the dinner table, Michael brought up something that had been weighing on his mind. "Dad," he began, looking at William intently, "sometimes at school, people ask me about who I am, like who my real parents are, or where I come from, and it makes me feel like I don't know the answer." William looked at his son, recognizing the struggle he was going through. "That's a big question, Michael," he replied gently. "And I understand why it's confusing. But who you are isn't just about where you came from. It's about who you choose to be, and the family that loves you. You have a story that's unique, and it's yours to tell in any way that feels right." Michael nodded, taking in his father's words. "I think I'd want to know more about my mom," he said quietly. "The one who had me, I mean. I want to know what she was like, what kind of person she was." William felt a deep pang of empathy, understanding his son's need to connect with his roots. "I understand, buddy. I can reach out to Thomas, and maybe together, we can learn more about her. If you're ready, we can find ways to remember her too." True to his promise, William reached out to Thomas, and together, they began piecing together memories and mementos that would honor Michael's birth mother. Thomas brought photographs, letters, and a few personal items he had managed to keep, and together, they created a small album that Michael could look at whenever he wanted. As they went through each item, William watched Michael's face, seeing the mixture of wonder and quiet reflection. It was a difficult process, one that tugged at old wounds and brought them closer together in unexpected ways. But through it all, William remained by Michael's side, offering the stability and reassurance his son needed. A new chapter. As Michael continued to grow, so did his confidence. He became a star student, his love for science and curiosity leading him toward a goal that made both William and Thomas proud. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Michael announced his ambition to become a doctor, just like his father. William's heart swelled with pride, a smile breaking across his face. "Michael, that's amazing. I had no idea you were thinking about that." Michael shrugged, a small grin on his face. "Well, I see you helping people every day, and it's inspiring. I want to help people too. Maybe one day we can work together in the hospital." Thomas chuckled, reaching over to ruffle Michael's hair. "Now that's a plan I'd love to see come true." From that day forward, William and Thomas continued to nurture Michael's dreams, supporting him in every way possible. Michael flourished, his mind sharp and eager, his heart filled with love from a family that had come together against all odds. And as he grew, so did the bond between the three of them, strengthened by a journey of forgiveness, love, and resilience. Years later, as Michael graduated from high school, both William and Thomas stood by his side, their faces beaming with pride as he accepted his diploma. In that moment, Michael looked out at the crowd, his eyes falling on the two men who had shaped his life, who had given him a family that was unique, unconventional, and yet complete. Michael stepped off the stage, moving toward William and Thomas, who were waiting with open arms. He hugged them both tightly, a feeling of gratitude swelling in his heart. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion, "for everything." The three of them stood together, a family united by choice, love, and the strength to face life's challenges together. William knew that their journey wasn't over. There would always be new challenges, new questions, and new memories to make. But as he looked at his son, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that they had built something beautiful, something lasting, out of a series of unexpected moments and choices. And for William, Michael, and Thomas, this was just the beginning of a lifetime of love, hope, and resilience, together as a family. A legacy of love and resilience. As the years passed, the bond that had formed between William, Michael, and Thomas grew only stronger. They had built a family filled with love, support, and acceptance, and each year brought them closer together. Michael flourished, entering college with a passion for medicine that mirrored William's dedication to his career. William's pride in his son grew with every accomplishment, every new milestone, and every success that Michael achieved. Yet, with each new chapter came new challenges. Life had a way of reminding them that family wasn't just about shared joy, but about being there through hardship as well. And one autumn evening, they faced a challenge that would test the strength of their bond like never before. An unexpected health crisis. Michael was in his second year of college, studying pre-med, when William began experiencing severe fatigue, a troubling contrast to his usually boundless energy. At first, he brushed it off as stress, the inevitable byproduct of balancing his demanding work schedule with supporting Michael through college. But when the fatigue worsened, accompanied by unexpected chest pains, William knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. One afternoon, he decided to schedule an appointment with a specialist, hoping it would reveal nothing more than stress. Michael, who was home on break, noticed the tension in his father's face as he sat at the kitchen table, reading through medical brochures with a distant look in his eyes. "Dad, is everything okay?" Michael asked, his voice filled with concern. William forced a reassuring smile, reaching out to pat his son's hand. "I'm fine, Michael. Just a little tired. That's all. Nothing to worry about." But Michael wasn't convinced. Over the years, he'd come to know his father's tells, the subtle ways he concealed worry to protect the people he loved. So when William's doctor confirmed that he would need open-heart surgery to repair a blocked artery, it didn't come as a complete surprise to Michael, though the news filled him with dread. As William prepared for the procedure, he remained calm and resolute, but his concern was evident in the way he held Michael's hand a little longer, in the way his eyes lingered on his son as though trying to memorize every detail. Michael, too, felt the weight of the situation, struggling to keep his composure as he faced the possibility of losing the man who had been his rock, his hero, and his guide through life. Thomas, ever supportive, stepped in to help, providing both Michael and William with steady reassurance. On the day of the surgery, Thomas sat with Michael in the waiting room, his presence a quiet but powerful comfort. Michael, though anxious, found strength in knowing that he wasn't alone, that he had two fathers who had always been there for him, no matter what. After what felt like an eternity, the surgeon emerged, offering them a tired but hopeful smile. "The procedure went well," he said, relief evident in his voice. "William is in recovery, and with proper care, He should make a full recovery. Michael's shoulders sagged with relief, tears of gratitude filling his eyes as he hugged Thomas, who held him close, sharing in the relief and joy of the news. In that moment, they both knew that their family had faced another test and emerged stronger, bound by a love that had only deepened over time. Recovery and reflection. During William's recovery, both Michael and Thomas rallied around him, supporting him through each step of the healing process. They took turns staying with him, making sure he had everything he needed. Michael, in particular, took on a new role, caring for his father with a dedication that reflected all the years of love and guidance he had received. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, William looked over at his son, pride and gratitude shining in his eyes. "Michael, you've become an incredible young man. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Michael took his father's hand, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Dad, I'm just doing for you what you did for me all these years. I wouldn't be who I am without you." As William recovered, they spent more time together as a family, cherishing each moment, each conversation. The experience had reminded them of the fragility of life, and they found comfort in the simple, everyday moments they shared: dinners around the table, movie nights, and quiet afternoons spent reminiscing, building a future and honoring the past. As Michael prepared to enter medical school, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the life he had been given. The journey had been anything but ordinary, filled with unexpected twists and turns, yet it had shaped him into the person he was becoming. His childhood had been filled with love from both William and Thomas, and as he prepared to take his next step, he wanted to honor the legacy of resilience and compassion they had instilled in him. One day, as they sat together in the garden, Michael shared his dream with William and Thomas. "I want to start a foundation," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "A foundation that helps children who don't have families, who feel lost like I once did. I want to give them the same chance I had, to show them that they're not alone." Both William and Thomas were deeply moved, their eyes filling with pride as they listened to Michael's vision. "That's an incredible idea, Michael," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea how proud we are of you, what you're doing. It's a beautiful way to give back, to carry forward everything you've learned." Together, they began planning the foundation, pooling their resources and connections to make Michael's dream a reality. They named it the Hayes-Harris Foundation, a tribute to the journey that had brought them together, and they dedicated it to helping children in need, providing them with support, education, and a sense of belonging. A graduation to remember. Years passed, and soon it was time for Michael's medical school graduation. The day was bright and filled with promise as he donned his cap and gown, preparing to walk across the stage. William and Thomas sat in the audience, their faces beaming with pride as they watched the young man they had raised step forward to receive his degree. As Michael's name was called, he turned to look at his father's, his heart swelling with gratitude and love. The applause that echoed through the auditorium felt like a tribute not only to his hard work, but to the strength and love of the family that had supported him through every challenge. After the ceremony, Michael found William and Thomas waiting for him, their smiles filled with joy. Without a word, he wrapped his arms around them, a silent acknowledgement of everything they had shared, everything they had overcome. "You did it, son," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're going to change lives." Thomas nodded, his hand resting on Michael's shoulder. "And you'll carry forward the love and resilience that brought you here. We're so proud of you, Michael. This is just the beginning." A legacy of love. As the years went on, the Hayes-Harris Foundation flourished, helping countless children find their own paths, their own families, and their own stories. Michael's work as a doctor became an extension of the love and compassion he had been raised with, a legacy that honored both William's dedication and Thomas's resilience. Every year, they gathered to celebrate the Foundation's anniversary, reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. They shared stories, laughter, and memories, always mindful of the love that had united them, despite the challenges they had faced. In time, William's health began to decline, a natural part of aging that he faced with quiet dignity. Michael and Thomas were by his side, caring for him with the same devotion he had shown them. In his final days, as he lay surrounded by the family he had built, William felt a profound sense of peace. One evening, as the sun set and cast a warm glow over the room, William took Michael's hand, his voice a whisper. "Michael, promise me you'll keep going, that you'll continue to help others. That's all I want. For you to keep making a difference, to keep living with love." Michael nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I promise, Dad. I'll carry on everything you taught me." With a gentle smile, William closed his eyes, his heart filled with gratitude. He had been given the gift of a family he hadn't known he needed, a second chance at love and purpose, and as he took his final breath, he knew that his legacy would live on in the lives of everyone he had touched, in the love he had shared, and in the family that would carry his memory forward. After William's passing, Michael and Thomas continued to honor his legacy through their work, supporting the foundation and sharing William's story with every child they helped. Together, they ensured that William's love would continue to touch lives, to inspire others, and to remind them that family is not just about blood, but about choice, resilience, and the willingness to stand by each other, no matter the challenges. In time, Michael found his own family, sharing with his children the stories of the man who had saved him, who had given him the love and guidance that shaped his life. And as he told them about William, about the journey that had brought them all together, he knew that his father's legacy would live on for generations, a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and family. And for Michael, William, and Thomas, their story was not just a journey but a legacy of love that would live on forever.